The decisions are getting a little more complex at this point. So for example, I've done a couple of players. South America is launching a freighter, basically, to haul some of their materials around because they have such a disproportionate amount of materials sitting around. Now this could actually be a problem because they can't access this so long as the pirate is there. But they think somebody else might take care of the pirate. The idea of building a military ship to deal with the pirate and then not have a freighter, I don't have a whole ton of cash, and I really do need to shift materials. Worst comes to worst, I can just jump out over the asteroid belt and let that remain blockaded. For the North Americans, I chose to upgrade this, the Andromeda, because it's not far from these asteroids. I can slide over to the asteroids and try to mine them. They're a valuable resource. I'm not so sure about the pirate, and I'm sending a rover out to explore Uranus, or something in the Uranus system. Basically, it's not a valuable system right now. Plus, I did check up on the pressure hulls and the volatile atmosphere. We can't actually do anything with the CVs where the volatile atmosphere is until we get pressure hulls. That makes more sense than Venus being the only place that's of any importance. So I can't build bases or anything near that, even though they'd be orbital bases. I chose not to build a freighter here, in part because I have this thing. I was going to use it as my freighter, but then I'm like, oh, asteroid, bonus victory points and all that. So we'll leave that alone. And I'm working my way through. But one of the things that came to mind is this is not really worth that much. It's worth a victory point, a politics point, half of the money that they have, like $3 billion or whatever. The victory point's nice, but you can get that from an asteroid. The rest of it seems quite small for, I think I'll build a military ship for it. Some players have military ships kicking around, though, I think. They built ships for exploration that have military capability. I think. We'll see. But this is not a high priority so far for people. It's hard to, here's one. It's hard to kind of get a grasp of what all the different ships are that are out there that are available to do shit. The other factor is this doesn't hurt one person. This hurts everyone equally. So again, like, some of the other facets where, like colonization or, terraforming, where it's not clearly to your advantage to do this, well, because everybody's involved in it, nothing may happen. In terms of available ships, only the Chinese and North Americans were able to get to the asteroids. There's 2 of them, so they'll each get a crack at one. The Russians could have and probably should have, but they had a full load of stuff, and I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, because they could have spaced stuff, a few new ships heading out. The rover going out here, flyby here. Does that make sense that rover's that far? I think the US probably had a very small booster. Whatever. They lost it. A lot of boosters went down, and a number of new telescopes up there. Nobody doing anything about the pirates. And a whole bunch of people took trade opportunities when they were building their bases, etc. We push on to, 2101. Yay. Taking it a little easy today. Went dancing yesterday. I gotta go shopping tomorrow. Yeah, that was supposed to be last weekend, but I was not in good shape. Not well enough to go shopping. But I think I should be tomorrow. But I also like to relax after dancing. My body feels about 20 years older after I go. As finding what the hell is going on in the rules in the game. So, for example, with blockades, I want to look at what's up with the pirate. Now, they have this combat in pirates, blockading and raiding NPF places. I haven't really looked at these. But if you have a fleet that could attack a base from orbit, you can blockade. The blockading fleets must be blah, blah, blah. When a base is blockaded, nothing here about intercepting. Okay? Combat with pirates, if your ship is successfully intercepted by pirates, 336, that may be what I'm looking for here. But the problem, let me get to this. With moving with launch vehicles, I found something that looked a little weird here, which was, well, maybe that wasn't it. I saw something which mentioned something about you can intercept when blocking, but it didn't refer to here. I thought it was launch vehicles. Damn it. Fleet can intercept another fleet leaving its location. In particular, it looks... Oh, okay. In particular, it looks to me like I can deliver goods up to here. I just can't get shit out of there without there being a chance of interception. Now, it's a little funny because the blockade section doesn't mention this directly, although it does at least, I think, refer to this. No. It's the pirates that refer to it. So yeah, it doesn't mention what you can do with blockading. And now, I'm trying to figure out the political side of things. Like, I'm pretty sure without at least blockade, I can't go shooting stuff down. Otherwise, there would have been an issue there. It's just sometimes hard to find things in here. Like, I get this feeling of what the game should be and try to operate with that, but it's not always possible that I can figure out what it actually says in the rule book. So, like, the diplomacy step doesn't really tell you what the impact of the diplomacy is. It might be embedded in other places. So, for example, the blockades does have this embedded, but it doesn't talk to, or does imply the effects of a blockade here, but it doesn't talk about the interception. So now, what if I go to the interception? Provided it would be able to take offensive action against it, 2.5. And this is what just has to happen with this set of rules. Maybe a desire not to repeat things. Okay, it's in the politics and foreign relations. When embargoing, you can blockade their bases, intercept their LVs carrying resources. Now, we'll see that gets me back to 2.61, which is different. This is where I found it. Okay. The move is instantaneous but can be intercepted, 3.36, if it's leaving or going to a blockaded base, which is, again, different from what 336 says or implies, which is you intercept another fleet leaving its location, but I guess if it's an LV, it's leaving the blockaded, it's leaving, say, Earth to get to the blockaded base. And since that's instantaneous, it makes sense. But how does it make sense? Can I slip into, it's beginning to look like I can slip into places. And now I can't remember what this was again. It was under launch vehicles, which is a weird place for it to be. There's nothing that's general that gives you all this information that you kind of need to find at once. And so what I was trying to point out is, poorly I guess, is that you have to kind of flip through the rules back and forth to try to find what's going on. Now there are other games that's the case with, most notably since, I've talked about it a lot in the course of this, Europa Universalis. You definitely sometimes have to go hunting through and chase the references and everything to find the right place where something's actually stated. My feeling is when a game is not incredibly disciplined and well referenced, it ought to be a little less parsimonious and make sure that you tell people about things. In particular here, interception, if part of the interception rule is only under LVs, it had damn well better send me there. But it ought to also tell me what the hell is going on. Why, yeah, this is why I thought it was here, because this is moving with launch vehicles as opposed to launch vehicles. You'd kind of think that would all be in one place. But yeah, resolve interceptions like searches, fleets containing only SVs, fleets containing CVs. Yeah, again, it's not clear to me. It does not make sense to me that you'd only be able to intercept something that's leaving. But I think what happens is you prevent it from leaving in that case, because they can choose to stop moving or resolve the interception as if it's a combat search. With CVs. With LVs and REs, though, it's an automatic destruction. Whatever. I do not understand what the full intention here is, and I can't actually come up with a reasonable argument of why. Obviously, you'd be able to detect something that's lifting off the planet, and maybe it's easier to slip something in. But it requires some hand-waving to try to come up with a means of explaining why the rules are written in precisely the way that they are. And that kind of explanation would help get a grasp on what it's meaning, and would help where the rules don't really provide a strong linkage between different sections in the rulebook. The particulars of the initiative order this turn are causing it so that nobody really is going for this. So there are people who kind of want to, but because they want to deliver goods, they want to send an LV up there. And from what I can tell, what I was looking up is, yes, do I actually need to clear those pirates out to safely get stuff there? Because if they catch me, they destroy it. From my reading of the rules, which means, yeah, I do have to worry about it. But the people who want to build a military unit to do that are kind of late in the order, so they can't guarantee that they're even the movement. So movement's kind of weird. The initiative order is reverse order unless somebody behind you wants to trump you, which means if somebody does want to go clear out that thing and get the victory point for it, let's say China or Russia, they can just do it. But Russia, who has a military unit, is probably going to stick around and keep searching with it. They don't see any great desire to go flying out that far away. And they probably can't beat somebody else if somebody else wanted to go for that. But they could beat somebody else if somebody else built a military unit, just because they could build as big a rocket and, as big a booster and get there at the same time, and thus have an advantage because they have the initiative, the ability to trump the initiative. China's the other one who kind of wants to, going early in the thing, but China's got an issue with, I got 3 ships. That's what I pay. That's what I am able to maintain for free. Yeah, I could dismantle a ship, but I'm happy enough with what I'm out there doing, and especially since I'm kind of depriving other people of capabilities. Although China wants to because they also want to clear a base so that they can build settlements and get rid of that shit. But again, this is hurting everyone. So it's kind of like, I don't want to go through too much work getting it. China also is one of the powers with a ton of money, over 50 billion, 57 billion after they launch. But I've run out of money most of the time. So there's kind of a conservatism towards, you know what, if I've been doing what I've been doing and running out of money when I'm in the 35 range, and maybe the same is true in the 50 range, you know? So let's see how I look, say, somewhere around here, even though it would be advantageous to get some of the stuff delivered earlier, to get more uses out of things, to get a flyby out there earlier or whatever. Erring on the side of that caution again. What happened? There were depletions. Over here. You know, mining. All the stuff that just happens, but nothing, no big earth-shattering occurrences. Maybe I'm stepping away too far at this point, but it's hard to report on things. I'm just kind of concentrating on plug my way through. We got a lot of shipping going on. Both the U.S. and Russia have something intense to do. The North Americans want to get to Uranus, and the Russians want to get a base established somewhere in the Saturn system so that they can keep pushing on. The Russians aren't doing a very good job. Notably, they have this ship. This is their only base builder that's on the board. And it's busy mining and, you know, searching resources and stuff. I have probably enough resources that I'm pretty close, especially with the stuff I'd be bringing back. But what I'm not doing is I'm not launching a third ship. I think third, maybe fourth. So I got this one, I got this one. Yeah, I already have 3 ships out there. What's this guy? Yeah, that guy's not big enough. That's the problem. I got one more big one. The Russians could have 4 ships out there. So I think they probably should be building one. But if they have to build it here, that means they need a bigger booster. And the cost of this thing is 6 iron. I can afford that. 3 fuel, there's nowhere I can, or 3 supplies, I can't build that here. And 3 fire, I can't build that here. But I can build the cargo version of this. Remember, it's 1 less supply, 1 less fuel, and then launch that with materials out, you know, to Jupiter, and then pick up the remaining materials, fuel up, you know, resupply up, and head forward. I probably should be doing that, but I just didn't realize. I knew I had a lot of ships juggling around, but because I'm walking away between turns for quite a while at this point, you know, I'm doing one turn a day basically, then I don't push anything out. And I think I'm on the right space here. I don't remember if I fucking moved it. Oh well. Okay. Okay, and this, I guess, 2102. We got some interesting stuff starting to go on. People are being a little bit more aggressive at this point. The Russians have decided to launch from Earth, throwing a whole wad of cash. You know, they had a lot, but a whole wad of cash to get themselves established over on Jupiter, or I'm sorry, on Saturn, and get their base out there. Elsewhere, China building an extra military CV. Now, that puts us way over our CV limit. Right now, we're allowed a total of 3. I'm not sure what I have. I have 1, 2, 3. I built the military one because I'm the last person to build. Nobody else has built one. And I said, screw it. I got the materials here. I'm doing it. And I'm just going to launch it out of Mars. That'll get there quite quickly. I can always decommission it, and it's sort of a way of transporting materials. Yes, do I lose something? Certainly. But there's a victory point at stake. What the hell? And a political marker. But plus a few $billion. And that doesn't really hurt. You know, I got to think about whether or not I'm launching anything from here, though. I got a ton of money there. I had to build another launch vehicle, which I did not do. Elsewhere, materials moving forward. Japan's got 2 ships in operation. Yeah, the U.S. was doing something interesting. You know, the U.S. was considering doing the launch all the way out to Uranus, but I don't have the basing to get me out there. I gotta get the basing before. I mean, it would be built in time. I held off. I probably have materials somewhere that I could do it, but oh no, here it is. Yeah, I am sending it out. Right, I had enough materials on Mars. I'm sending a ship directly out of Mars. And again, you don't have to lift off Mars, and so I don't need a booster for that. CV4 is the biggest I could send out from Mars, but that's okay. It's the biggest that I need. Anything else can't build bases. All right, so we get a lot more going on. Trying to get at least one turn in a day. That was my old rule with things like EU. When I'm like, okay, I'm slowing down, the gas is running out, or with WIF, or with A World at War, or whatever. Any of these big games, eventually I just have to say, you know what, maybe I can get 2 turns in some days, but I can't count on plowing through the way I did before. And the game's gotten more complicated, Actually, I can't send the US ship there. I don't have the base there. I want to get the materials moving though, and that was part of the point, is that lifting the materials is tough. So let me send the materials to Saturn, where I do have a base, because my base range is still 3. So I can't get from Jupiter out to Uranus. So that I think was the plan. So it's a Saturn, let me recalculate, it's a 6. On the 0.6, it's only the 4 chart instead of the 5 chart, yeah. Nothing that good. I wanted to recharge the ship, or build the ship fully at Mars, even though I have materials out in the Saturn orbit. I'm worried about burning those materials, and having them closer in contact. And in fact, here's the thing. If I could get enough base built at Uranus, I can then jump out to Neptune, if I so desire. Halfway through the exploration side, a lot of the normal, hey, I pick a chit, whatever, get some mining maybe if I remember to do that. Some crew fatigue, whatever. But Asia had a really, really nice turn. They got a depletion here and here. Both off 5s, by the way. They did not find any life, but, they're getting some nice points banked in terms of both what they discover directly with the chit, but also they're getting the politics markers, etc. And they upgraded the card, too. We moved the turn marker this time. A little bit of building up. So I don't know, like the U.S., they got their supply station big enough, but now I don't have fire to recharge this ship, so I kind of misappropriated, but that's life. That shit just happens. What I may do is, if there's anywhere I want to send stuff, like if I needed to send iron here, that might not be such a bad idea, but I'm just going to delay a turn. North America is actually doing pretty well because of their ships, so I shouldn't complain too much. Interesting thing about them, I don't think they've done any exploration yet this decade, any crewed exploration. They may have done something otherwise, but I don't think they've done anything at all. They're the one person with like the +3 bonus on crew exploration, and they haven't been able to use it. They will. They got this thing coming, but they were just not, I don't know, that this ship may have done something and I may have forgotten to give it. I hope I do remember things like that. It's hard, man. It's hard. There's a lot of shit juggling in your head. All right. I might just make it up for another turn. Both an excitement and a dissuasion is the fact that, hey, I'm going to have to read the combat rules and give that a test run. And that may convince me that, yeah, maybe I can go to combat, maybe I can go to war or whatever. Especially the blockade status, I think, allows you to start smacking robotic stuff around, which, is just kind of a cheap way to kill stuff off. I start the fourth turn of this decade. I noticed something I've been forgetting all game, which is I have not been... All the other powers, I remember their special ability. I've totally forgotten about Asia's special ability, which is an additional resource at each of their bases when they produce resources. This is actually kind of a big deal, but I can't really go back and try to figure. I mean, I kind of could, but screw it. They're doing okay, and we'll try to remember. We're seeing some interesting stuff happening. First of all, I'm delaying reading the rules, so I haven't dealt with that yet, even in terms of reading it. But we have some resources being pushed up still. So, for example, the fuel that the North Americans need. But we're also seeing people throwing some robotics up that, hey, let's get some exploration out here where the exploration's rich. Because Saturn's almost tapped out at this point. We have a 2 and a 1 left and a 2. Over here, Jupiter, actually the best is Jupiter itself. Partially because the pressure hulls don't exist yet. Nobody's got the pressure shell, so they can't explore Jupiter that way. And all the other stuff is largely gone. So then, we start looking, and stuff like the asteroid belt is as good as anything else. And then on this side, Mercury is still pretty rich too. So we might see some people fling something there eventually. But overall, we've tapped out sort of the close stuff, and there aren't a lot of good opportunities available until you hit going pretty far out. The thing I wanted to point out that is new, and I kind of got distracted. Asia we're able to create a hauler here. They didn't even need any supplies for this thing. I guess it's just fully robotic or something. I don't know. Even though it's treated like a crude vehicle. So that they can haul some fuel over here. Might as well. It'll take a little longer than just launching stuff, but I wanted to launch a rover. And, then I can dismantle this, and I'll get 2 iron. I'm sorry, not fuel supplies. It's blue, it's water. It should be fuel according to High Frontier. Yeah, but, But yeah, I'll be able to decommission that ship, or I can just keep flinging it back and forth. I've got the room for an extra CV, maybe. I'm not sure. They have like 3 plus. I don't know if they have any purchased. They did not get any additionals, so I doubt they have 3 up. It's hard to see, but I see 2 of them. I think this is their 3rd one. So it wouldn't really hurt to keep it flying around, hauling materials back and forth. Just to try to take advantage of, where I've got too much production on one base instead of one type instead of another, and try to equal that out. After doing everything, Chinese are the last in the line. They did their movements as well, I hope. Yeah. Oh, I didn't do that. I got to do that. But we're ready to start the combat. And that's basically a procedural action. Let me do this and get it out of the way first. Where do I want to send it? It's a rover. Everybody's sending rovers. It's the group thing when you're one person, right? Everybody's sending rovers out. The question is, do I want to send it out here where there's actually a couple of decent things out there? Or do I want to do what the Japanese did and throw it out as far as Neptune? I think I probably want to send it to Uranus. So it's coming from Earth, which means we're looking at a 7 base minus 3. Just to get used to this, is a 4, and then we follow the 0.6. That gets us to 2. So we're going to be hitting the 2 locations. I make the engine failure roll, no bonuses because it's not CV. And we make it without losing the booster, which is cool because it's a big expensive booster. And I said it was 2. We're sending that out to Uranus. Okay. Just to be less crass. Somebody apparently didn't like the fact that I'm sure lots of people don't, that I curse like a sailor when I'm troubled by rules. Well, get ready for that because here we are ready to jump into the rules. From what I can understand, from the combat with pirates, I can choose to search for them. Otherwise, I'd have to run away, or I'd have to fly through the space, see if they search me and succeed, and then they try to evade anyway because I'm armed. So what we're going to be doing is we each get a die, and I'll use the red die for the Chinese because they seem redder. And the pirates are black and foul. Yeah, we got to be careful with stuff like that nowadays, as I've learned. And yeah. Okay, so we have a ship that can attack, so we can do the search. One at a time, each fleet can search for an enemy fleet. Both the searching and the fleet being searched for roll a search die. If there are no bases, the search is successful on a 4 or less. If there's a base, it's automatically successful by both sides. But the search die roll determines the tactics points. Increase both sides' chances of finding by 1 for each CV after the first in the searching fleet now, and the fleet being searched now. If you have fighter drones, if you have the tech fighter drones, you subtract 1 from your search die roll. Well, everybody does. Not the pirates, but... Okay, so we're at -1 on the Chinese. If it contains a drone squadron... We do not, do we? We have that weird little flag. What's that mean? Is that a drone squadron? Shit. Let's see if it's this on here. Nope. Not on that cheat sheet. Which means we go back to, and this is where we start cursing, right? We have to try to find something that we've gotten very, very used to, which is wherever the fuck, here we go, information is. So this has, I think, drone squadrons. I'm not sure. No, it's got a mobile lab on it. Ha! Well, that's very combat oriented. Okay, so no drone squadrons, so we do not subtract. Okay. Or 2 if your fleet contains 5 or more. 5 or more what? Squadrons? I'm assuming that's what they mean. Okay, so I don't know what happens here. Let's see. All right, we got a 4 on the Chinese. That is a success, I believe. A 4 or less, yes. Now, we have tactics points equal to the other person's die roll. And this is the place where in Whiff, you have something a little different. If you don't want to be found at all, you might, if I recall correctly, want to be on a low search box because it makes it harder for you to find anyone, which forces a combat. But there's trade-offs because being in the high search box, I believe gives you, it's been a while since I played. I believe gives you more tactical points. So like there's kind of this trade-off of if you don't want to be found, you can stumble into people if you're in a high search box, but you're more ready for them if you do. And it kind of makes sense, but what it generally means is except in some very exceptional circumstances, like if both people are in low search boxes, well, if both people can be in a low search box and you move later, you might want to be in a lower search box just to decrease the chances of running into each other. I find the search system in A World at War much, much more interesting. It's also more detailed, but you know, you don't have something like that here, and you don't have the search box complexity, which I do agree with the designer that it is kind of usually a false choice where you go in that. So, okay, so now we have tactics points that are generated from, wonder what the hell that was. I think it was out on the porch. Weird shit gets thrown, generally by squirrels. Maybe it was scared by that motorcycle. Okay, so where are we? There's all kind of noise going on. I gotta love just garbage cans being pulled out. Okay. So tactics points should be 8 and 4. Let's go see. 3.44 is resolve the tactics points. Nobody's going to surrender. Pirates don't do that. At the start of combat, each player gets tactics points. Modified by drone squadrons, policies, and techs. Oh, good lord. We've been ignoring combat policy. So we've got the fighter drones here. Oh, no Chinese there. Space weapons is going to give me a +3 to the attack roll for the Chinese, and I don't think there's anything higher up. Very well. And over here, I don't see a policy that implements this. Not until we get here. Okay. Okay. At least I'm assuming. Can't assimilate all the information, so, you know, we do like I do at my work. We scan things and hope for the best, because complete accuracy is impossible. Okay, so we're not going to have the surrender. Remember, you steal a politics marker on a surrender. There may be a victory point on post-combat, which is slightly different, but I don't think so. Okay. Each adds 1 for every full 7 points of enemy CV size. And that's a CV5, and the other one's a CV2, so neither one is. The larger subtracts the other side's tactics. So the Chinese have 4 tactics points. They can spend them to make a direct fire combat. Neither side has drones, so I think we have to. Avoid combat, that costs 3. Increase or decrease damage. You can spend 2 for each point of extra damage and 1 to select targets. Well, so I think I have to spend 1 for direct combat. Otherwise, we're not going to fight, because neither of us has drones. Do the bigger ones have drones? Doesn't look like it. Interesting. Does it say anything about drones? I mean, it wouldn't make sense that they have drones. They don't want to destroy the enemy. They want to capture them. So that gives me one increase or decrease damage. I'm going to take a decrease because, I don't know. Okay, it's going to be direct combat. You can select any of your ships or bases you wish screened. No. They wouldn't fight. It's not strike. Now both sides determine how much damage. Add up your combat values. Add 1 die roll plus 1 for each enemy unit in the combat. After the first. Okay. So that's a 5. That's a 1. We're taking that 1 away. So our die rolls are 12 to 4. Let's keep looking. Okay. You use the 18, okay, what the hell? For example, yeah, what, add up your combat values and add 1 die roll plus 1 for each enemy unit in combat. And cross-reference with the combat table. 11 at the back of the rolls. Uh-oh. I'm not going to have that on here because we had to have this front sheet on there. So each player may have it here, though. And it is. Okay, direct fire value is going to be this number, I guess. Okay, so we were looking at 12 and 5. 5 does 1 point of damage. I'm sorry, 12 and 4. 4 does nothing. 12 does 3 points of damage. Each hit applies a damage marker. CVs are destroyed when they get equal to their size. So we have just destroyed the pirate. This is good. It's exactly what we wanted to have happen. I think the fact that we stayed out there searching means we're not going to be able to move. That's my understanding. I don't know. I'll look after the combat. For each player-controlled CV, because if I had gotten intercepted, I would get to continue moving after the battle if I won. Each player-controlled CV destroyed in combat earns a victory point marker based on the size of the ship. Well, that's where you get your victory points. These aren't player-controlled, though. For each CV or base you lose in combat, earn equivalent engineering markers. We didn't lose anything. For each damage marker, the CV has to check for recall. Nope. If you, we're not going to be blockading. So we combated with pirates. We fought. We searched and fought for them. We only got to fight one. We attempt to choose direct fire combat. Well, that's what they're going to try. But they don't otherwise spend combat points. Well, yeah, but that's if they don't. If they're damaged but not destroyed, they stay where they are. Destroying earns half the accumulated combat pirate cash, a politics, and a victory point marker. So that's what we get out of this. Now, blowing up enemy ships is with victory points, and maybe bases too. But they can surrender, and then you just get spoils if you have room for them, which isn't as exciting. Because fighters don't ever have any hauling capacity. So you have to bring your freighter in with you to steal the goods and all kind of stuff like that. So that's all problematic in terms of like what you can gain from combat. You have to hunt down enemy CVs. LVs and REs don't get you anything. They're just destroyed. So you're just hurting the enemy by your expenditure on combat. However, those victory points for blowing up CVs might be of value, but the enemy, if he's outgunned, can just surrender. And then he's just fatigued, and you get his goods and stuff, but you get very little. You get a politics marker out of it, which doesn't seem like very much to expend a politics marker to go to war with. But in this case, I get all the goodies. A victory point marker. How high are we here? Yeah, there are twos. And we get half that money, and I think it's rounded up. So we get $3 billion bucks, which is paid by the Earth government or something. And I'll throw this shit there. So that's what combat's like. Not all that exciting, to tell you the truth, but we didn't really expect it to be. This goes over here. Yeah, if it's ship versus ship combat, things get more interesting, but this is not a game in which it appears that combat is really a driving factor of the game. Unlike Europa Universalis, combat seems to be a minor facet of it because you're only allowed limited wars. You're not allowed to capture the enemy's bases. The best you can do is shoot the living shit out of them and, you know, maybe destroy them. But again, you're just costing an enemy in that case. Now, what about bases in post-combat? I don't see any impact in terms of victory points for that. Although I think you probably won't be hurting a base much. It might be more valuable because of the raiding NPF bases. You get 2 for blockade. You can try to raid them. This looks like an attack. But yeah, I got out of this scot-free, which isn't too bad. Got a victory point out of it. I can't complain about hunting that pirate. It was worth doing. The reason no one else wanted to do it was they were afraid that the Chinese would see, somebody else is going for it. I'll launch my ship now. All right. I think we've spent enough time on that. It's time to go to exploration. There's a little bit of pirate cash left. Each time there's a pirate ship, it's worth half the money. I guess it could eventually get down to 1, but it keeps adding money. So I think it's unlikely. I think that pirate money kicks around and just keeps growing for the most part. I don't know if there's a way to get it down to 0 ever again. In base building, we have run out of supply station. Spaceports. We have tons and tons of small supply stations, but the truth of the matter is if you want to be able to, push larger ships out, you need something bigger than that. Now, it may have been that I built too many spaceports in the back areas where maybe I don't need them so much, you know? So for example, I got a spaceport here at Mars, and I got one in the asteroid belt. Do I really need one in each? Probably not, but here's the thing. I do. Because I don't necessarily need the large spaceports anywhere, but the small spaceport versus the supply station. Let me find a supply station. The large supply station, allows me to push the CV3 out. A CV3 at best doesn't get me a whole lot. It gets me a 4. I needed a 4 here, but I got Earth, so that's no big deal. Here I'm at a 7. I need to be where I'm just beginning to hit in terms of the bases, the +3 base building that the Russians have. I would need to have gotten there to begin colonizing that from Mars. So that's where the problem is. It immediately starts getting big. And then out here, it's not easy either. And I can't colonize Venus. I could have conceivably colonized Mercury. The problem with Mercury, you don't need a space station at Mercury. Once you can get there, there's no real reason that you need another space station. So that's not really a factor either. If I did build one of my bases, I feel like there probably should be the 42 space stations that there needs to be, simply because, or close to it. I mean, right now we're looking at, let's see, most of the people have 3, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 15. And 8 is 23. So there were 22 of those space stations. For other things, it's more iffy. So you have the mining and refineries, and we're running low on refineries. There's no question about that either. But I've been heavily relying on refineries, and again, the mining ends up converting to them, so I end up with piles of mining. Just because it's natural, right? There's no real reason that you'd have tons and tons of these smaller ones, but there's a good reason you'd end up with tons of larger ones. Now, of course, we had too much production, and that may have influenced all of this, but there's a lot of game left. I would expect certainly the spaceports to push me most of the way out, because the big points come the further out you go. We can take a look at that and see just what those points are like. But yeah, and in order to push out, you need the spaceport until you reach whatever it is. There's something that allows you, the crew hibernation, which allows you to actually send a crew out to Alpha Centauri. Okay, in order to get so anyway, there just are not enough counters for that. Are there too many of other counters? Yeah, there may be. Settlements, wow, there are a lot of settlements. Now, there's a lot of game left, and those are smaller. Maybe if they had made these smaller as well, it would have worked better. The choice between research station and mining means you need less of each of those. I don't know about the defense networks. Again, I haven't been doing them, but there seem to be a lot of those available, which, unless the game gets into a military stage, yeah, you might end up seeing people build them to defend their bases before that. But anyway, I really contend that there are just not enough bases, because now I'm having to use this, and what do I do about it? You know, I could write on it or something else. Right now I'm just using it as a blank. It's a large spaceport, and that's what we're going with, but it's a little unsatisfying. You're not limited by counter mix, but it's a little unsatisfying to have to, you know, throw counters in this early in the game. You know, if we were really late in the game, yeah, whatever. Or maybe it doesn't even matter too much anymore, because people are at that unlimited range or whatever. At some point or another, because I saw the combat enhancements, I built a couple of defense networks for the Russians. They're the only ones who bought them. They had a lot of extra iron kicking around, especially down here. Other people do too. Iron's easy to produce in large quantities in some cases, so we could have seen a Chinese. They didn't choose to do so, though. They're kind of like, screw that, man. If there's going to be a war, we're going to be the aggressors, and we're gonna swamp you with military ships, and we're not really worried because we've been getting the advantage up here because of our large positioning in the military. So we'll have some warning, presumably. I don't know how much, because again, somebody could build up a large navy, throw a lot of points in to the initiative roll, maybe just get lucky on it and jump to a war with China. But China doesn't look like they're ahead. And my feeling has been that people are not going to go to war unless they have at least one ally ganging up on the obvious leaders, So, and right now there really is no obvious leader. That's the problem. The main reason being because that accumulation of victory points from attacking enemies, it doesn't happen on a surrender. Now, I believe the surrender happens before, well, you've rolled your search, so you kind of know what the tactics points are going to turn out as before you surrender. So they've caught you, and you have a pretty good idea how far down your pants are, and you can just be like, yep, not going to fight this one. I'm going to surrender. It reserves you. It loses any resources, and some of them can be captured if the enemy has something, and they get a whole victory, a whole value of a politics marker, which is just not much. It really isn't. And that can happen. That happens whether you're at war. I don't think you're allowed to attack CVs if you're in blockade. I'm not positive about that. That's one of the things I've been having trouble figuring out, is just what the different diplomacy states imply. And again, it's hard to find stuff in this rule book. You would think it would be at least referenced here, right? But it's not. Now, I know there are rules for it. I've read them, but I don't know if they completely explain. So let's see, under combat, I think it does tell you what you can attack. Combat phase. Okay, we got interception first. I'm not fucking getting it. Yeah. I think it's explained somewhere, but I gotta tell you, this rulebook is really hard to find materials like that. Maybe it's defined here under politics and foreign relations. That would be a reasonable place for it. Okay. While embargoing, you can blockade their bases, intercept their LVs carrying resources, and intercept and search for CVs. Doesn't look like you can hit their REs. However, you must accept surrenders, and you may not search for ships that are located at bases. While at war, you can attack their ships and bases. Nothing about REs. Now, you're allowed to attack REs. I can tell you that. Because, and I'm going to assume, attacking a CV seems like a bigger deal than attacking an RE. But it's because LVs and REs that are unaccompanied or bases are automatically destroyed by any successful search. So my guess is that there's a piece of errata that, is, I'm sure, in the pile that says if you've got blockade, you can attack things. So you can attack ships with blockade status. Now let's take a look at this other thing, because there was something implied here that I didn't like. Which is, yeah, lots of Oz, huh? Let's find it. And it's kind of funny. I mean, It's not in the diplomacy step. It's over here in this other section, politics and foreign relations, and there's no reference to send you back to that I saw. But in particular, when embargoing, what am I trying to look for? Oh yeah, intercept and search for their CVs. However, you must accept surrenders when offered. While at war, you must accept the surrender of bases. Nothing about CVs. And let's go look at the combat surrender rules. The other side can choose to surrender. You must accept them while embargoing. Okay, and only bases when not. So yeah, it should be pretty impossible to wipe out somebody's base. You might do some damage to it, and then they can fix that. And it's just iron, I think. For CVs, you know, again, if you outgun the enemy, you pretty much can whack them. But at war status, you can actually shoot down their CVs. You can guarantee yourself the victory points. So that's something I wasn't really catching, that there's a differentiation there. You can hunt down their ships. The concept of a colonial war, you know, so limited wars in which you can't capture colonial territories doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I'm not sure how well that fits in. It would seem to me that that limited war would allow, like the surrender of a base or whatever, should allow you to capture the base. That's not the way the surrender rules work here. And likewise with ships, surrender of a ship should allow you to capture the ship. Of course, nobody would surrender if the penalty's too high. And these are, you know, one of the things that I was thinking about, and again, I'm babbling my ass off on this one. One of the things I was thinking about with this game is that, well, you know, if I wasn't complaining about how it didn't align with historical colonization type ways in which, you know, the limited wars were handled, I would probably be complaining that they're just modeling, you know, world history here. Shouldn't there be something a little different? Shouldn't there be a different kind of politics there? Because, you know, I can always find something to complain about. Probably just stick to playing games. I did some yard work today and managed to lop off a little, what I think was an avocado plant that I had growing, and I've been so proud that it wasn't intended, but it grew out of, I do some trench composting, and it looked like it was growing out of that, and I've been really careful all year, actually for longer than a year, kind of coaxing it, keeping it alive, trying to avoid it, but it's in this area where there's all these damn blackberries, and I knew it was in danger. I'd cut off a leaf already at one other point, and this time I just lopped it apart with that damn branch cutter. Anyway, on to another turn, a happier note, I hope. Can't be much worse for me. China's opened up the asteroid belt for everyone. A bunch of people, including the Chinese, boosted shit up to that base simply because it's kind of advantageous. And I'm wondering what's up with this guy. I did not move all my Chinese ships, or all my Russian ships for that matter either. I'm seeing some things here that I gotta move to. So much clutter, and the fact that the bases are the same size as the ships is part of the problem. Obviously, I should be able to see the things in the flyby boxes, but maybe if I had a bigger table set up for this. Again, you know, I really wasn't prepared for quite the size and length of this game when I jumped into it. I'm buzzing along happily, but yeah. Exploration, mixed bag. A fair number of depletions out there, but also a fair number of equipment failures, retiring crews, stuff like that in key locations. You know, so you get that bonus biochip, which is kind of cool. It's part of the reason why we're sending crewed vehicles out, is to get those additional exploration chits rather than the mechanical failure chits, which are more likely, I think. Maybe not. 24 malfunction to 35, whatever. So I'm lying. But they just don't feel like they're as big a payoff. It feels like the bio chart is where I really want to get things, because too often here, now maybe if I was getting bigger chits in the engineering, you know, I'd be shifting up to bigger ships, but I don't really need that. Space elevator, I don't know. Nanotech is interesting, but once you have that, it's basically a means, like the physics one, like the bio one for that matter, of pushing, you know, yourself to the victory condition mark on there. As we continue to build up our bases, and it's in different ways, you know, so like some of them are like, hey, let's get a settlement so we can cash in this trade shit. Some of them, let's get settlements so we get more production or whatever. But you know, others are working for the refineries. A lot of effort going for that asteroid belt, as I mentioned. One thing I really wanted to note, though, was North America is out of cash. They're tapped out. And without shifting things around, and maybe even with, they're going to have a hard time putting other ships in play. And in fact, they may need to use their fatigued ship to haul some crap, because they do not have refueling capabilities anymore at their outermost base at Saturn, which could end up kind of problematic. We're all not even, you know, we're halfway through the decade, basically, not even. So, you know, kind of think I might want to cut this one short, but not tonight. We'll see. We'll see how I feel tomorrow about it. And that's it for tonight. The folk are just lifting material still. We do have a couple launches, though. EU's throwing a flyby out, and the South Americans are throwing a rover without a probe by. Can't think of a good reason I'll pay the extra buck for the probe. They have a ton of money sitting on them. That's why they're doing this. They have piles of money. The mission itself is fairly expensive if you keep cycling a lot of robotic units out or whatever. CVs, you know, once they fail, it costs you basically $2 billion eventually to get them back into play, you know, or more likely just materials that you have lying around anyway. They produced and moved around. But, you know, worst comes to worst, it costs you $2 billion worth of stuff, because you're not returning to Earth, you're doing it off a base. But every time one of these things fails, I have to pay the build cost, which is less than it is for a CV, but it very quickly, the robotic exploration becomes more expensive. However, there's a limit to how much and how far you can do CV exploration, and as we've seen, it's just not, you know, we're not capable of doing exploration on Venus yet, nor really for most people Uranus or further. So, which is where all the points are. You know? Yeah, there's some stuff over on Mercury. Someone could send a CV out to Mercury at this point. The problem is all the efforts in this direction, so that doesn't happen. But to get better chances of getting piles of tech, you have to just keep pushing out further and further and further. And I'm not too bothered by the points in terms of, you know, there's still points available at this stage in the game, even though I didn't use that optional depletion rule. Even though a lot's depleted in the inner solar system area, that's okay. There's still stuff available even here, you know. All right, that's about it. We'll do the movement. Saturn and Jupiter largely tapped out, and Mars too, for whatever that matters. The asteroid belt, that's one of the more attractive places that people can get to. Remember, Uranus is not available to anyone except the US, or the North Americans, which is why they have ships heading out in that direction. This one is too. It's just going to make a brief stop at Saturn. I don't even think it costs anything to do that, but so yeah, we're starting to see clusters here, and Jupiter is not completely tapped out, so people are still operating out of it. Saturn's not completely tapped out either, although I'm not sure why. What he is up to. why is he going to that base? He must have been coming out of Uranus. Because there's like nothing there, and I'm not going to be able to lift stuff, so I'm going to probably have to just bounce further back if I want to do anything. Which I do, so yeah. Anything else? Yeah, it's exploration time. Done with the turn without too much of interest happening. I mean, really, the game is kind of mechanical playing itself. It's just really, once you make the decisions of where things are going, you know, there were no depletions. You know, things were searched for, things were found, shits were allocated. The engineering pile was reshuffled, and we got points out there. But you know, that's really for the end of the game, or the end of the decade. One thing that I'm finding out is that the CVs, and having a high CV ratio is probably really important, allow you to develop more resources. The CV miners are allowing you to pull in resources more quickly than a small colony with a heavy, you know, like a large refinery going on in it. The large refinery will pull in maybe 10 resources per turn, per decade, right? You know, if you got a good resource production there, plus whatever you have in terms of settlements, which can obviously shoot this up a little bit, but it only goes up 6 more, right? You're not talking about that huge an amount of a difference of having these huge settlements in play. But this single little ship off on its own doing mining work, you know, it can pull in 2 to 3 resources each turn, assuming it doesn't retire. So it can haul, if it's one of these 6-point-ones, maybe 3 loads of 6 resources in the course of a decade. So you're looking at, you know, about what a massive colony can produce over the course of a decade. And better than that, you have the capability to target resources with it. So actually those refineries, those big mining colonies, those are turning out to be less interesting than I first thought. And obviously way less interesting than when they produced everything, you know, all resources, where they were really, really, you know, gave me this huge boost by cheating that way. Shit. See, I'm at the halfway point in the decade, but I think each turn is taking me maybe 5 minutes of video or something. So I'm gonna just keep this and load them up more slowly. Dismantled a little scout and get some resources there. Things are kind of tapping out, so you know, if it can't mine, kind of like it's not worth doing the searching. And the things that can mine, I can fling them out, you know, into the asteroid belt or whatever, where there's a little bit more prospect than either Jupiter or Saturn at this point, given that both of them have volatile atmospheres. Other people largely lifting resources. This is going to send. So this was a question of whether I wanted to dismantle this as well. The advantage of this thing, though, is I can fling this all the way back and haul some fire fuel, whatever, back, and then dismantle it once more at the end of the decade without really losing anything. I think I've got enough time to do that trip. I hope. If not, you know. And also, a couple of people, they're throwing a flyby out, they're throwing an orbiter out. A couple of things being lifted that aren't just materials. Right, depletion on the Jupiter system, I don't remember, over here. And they're starting to show up in Uranus now. You know, once people start paying attention heavily to something, boom, it just starts dropping. Not a whole lot else happening this time. And all the exploration, the base building, hauling materials, etc. is kind of slowing down a little bit. Not just because money's trimming down, it's just, it's hard to get the materials up there and to decide, yeah, I want to build settlements that aren't going to give me a payoff right away next decade, so screw it, you know, that kind of stuff. The one interesting thing that's happening now, we see the 2 bases coming into play. The problem with the North American base is, one, I'm heading into an area where there aren't a lot of different choices. So there are 2 interesting planets here. So we got a few interesting things going on. So first of all, the Russians have identical planets here with signs of life. This one has some chance of being degraded, but it also then has a chance of actually finding life. So both of those are interesting. The question is, do I want to be on the same planet with the North Americans? The advantage to that is we can work together to terraform it. And if everybody goes there, though, it's like every other planet in the game. If we carve out on our own, well, we might be able to exclude the North Americans, but we don't particularly want to do that. But we're worried people might exclude us. But, you know, better to be with the North Americans in that case, where we can work together to create our own terraformed planet. Because we don't want more than one base in any particular, well, moon in this case, in any particular planetary system. The other thing is, it's beginning to take a real effort to get the materials where they need to go. Remember, both players could have right away moved in to colonize, but the North Americans had to build up, well, in terms of they had the technology, but the North Americans had to build up a base that they could even get their big ships here, even on the track for that, which is why I did this little bounce thing. And they had to collect up the materials in the right place. The Russians also had some trouble gathering the materials and the ships in the right place. I think they could have probably done it a little quicker. I don't think the North Americans could have. I have not moved this forward, and that's it for tonight. You can lift stuff's lifting junk. That's not the North Americans. All they have is a booster. And the Japanese are the one exception to that. They're throwing a flybot out there. This is the end of their money, but the thing is, getting research through these areas that are richer seems more valuable than maybe boosting a base a little bit. The one thing that could weaken us is maybe we won't be able to refuel a ship or something, although we have a lot here available for that, and more back here. But we kind of want this stuff to be able to do the boost into whatever our Saturn base is when we get there. And what else? We had a couple of people dismantle their, this would be, if I recall correctly, I think the Asians and the Russians dismantling their freighters that ended up, oh no, the U.S. dismantled one of its little scout type ships. But these guys dismantled a freighter, which is definitely an issue. The reason for doing that, I looked and tried to figure out, well, what would I haul? Yeah, I could go back and haul some fuel, but I had nothing for this route. Better to just dismantle this here and maybe build another one, you know, next decade or something to haul a bunch of shit. It just doesn't seem, that worthwhile to just, you know, keep moving stuff around. I can just build settlements up here. They're worth something rather than haul that material around, because I have a lot of other stuff. Let me see what they're worth, if I can find. Got all this player aid stuff here. So settlements is the number that you have multiplied by a multiplier. So in this case, this would be out in Mars, so it's the 1.25. So rather than hauling stuff back and forth, it's cheaper for me to produce supplies, the blue things, and just build settlements up there. And, you know, rather than try to move them to more interesting places where they get a better multiplier. Hey, well, first of all, North America is going to build its base this turn. But elsewhere, we're starting to see some completions here. This has dropped down to a 1, which means everybody will probably migrate there. Or maybe just start heading off towards Earth and Mercury, where there are still some other higher values as well, depending on, you know, so like South America, why do I have so many ships, right, in this system? There is still a 1 here. I could still search those, but, yeah, some people may decide to push forward and go look at Mercury or something. Other than that, I don't know. I'll do the base building. We're not going to see anything too exciting other than the North American, I don't think. A fairly heavy amount of colonization was done. As we're getting close to the end, you know, it's clear we're not going to be able to do major things. We've built up bases as much as we can in terms of stuff. We're not going to have a lot of ships moving into them. It's beginning to get to that end of the period. We had somebody do a trade-in where they just bought one fuel here to just get the chip out of the place. I don't need that capability to build a lot of fuel. So, you know, that kind of evening out and balancing. People running low on the cash resources on Earth, which means less and less happening. So like Russia, they're pretty close to panned out at this point. You can see Asia, they're done. This is their last crap. Breaking my pipe trying to bite. This is their last lift off. Japan is pretty much out. I'm going to buy some fuel there to get rid of the counter. A lot of people are down and out. And, you know, I mean, we still got 3 turns, including this one. Other people, however, have hordes of money. China has a pile of cash, so we're launching another flyby. Get some more research in there. EU has 20-something bucks. You know, but I don't want to build another booster because I probably can't maintain 2 boosters throughout, you know, time and whatever. So it's just kind of this tweaking. And if I end up with money left over, that's not a bad thing. It's not like it disappears or anything. The gap that happened at Jupiter and Saturn and the fact that most people can't actually reach Uranus, really until we hit this, there's this one place in Saturn, then there's a gap, and then there's not as many places where people really can play around. This stuff's pretty tapped out, etc. So there's less exploration going on. Some stuff still happened. We had some depletions, and quite a few like crew fatigues and broken equipment and stuff. Nothing really exciting showed up though. But yeah, you can see this area is just sort of vacated. I find that so amazing. At some point or another, you know, the crews will be able to explore here. I could be sending robotic orbiters and stuff. Jupiter especially looks kind of promising for that. But for other stuff, it's all tapped out completely until we get out in here, and then people are targeting that stuff a little bit more. A lot more robotic exploration going on because now that Jupiter and Saturn are gone and most people can't go anything, they can't do anything. Kind of screwed up with the North Americans. It's a hard decision. Do I want to try to look for better or, you know, worse or whatever stuff where I landed my base? Or do I want to go over here, make sure that's not particularly good so that everybody has to come to my base and be able to mine as well? And I was kind of counting on being able to ship goods. So if I remember, I'll probably shift him over because I think trying to improve or trying to keep like the Chinese from screwing me up here is really not a worthwhile effort when I could be pulling mining materials out. All right, the base building. We're going to see the Russian base get built. Otherwise, I don't know. Stuff. Because of the advances that the North Americans are making, they actually decided to toss down a couple of defensive networks. You know, it's just iron and they have plenty of that back in those areas. So they're like, let's make it so it's a little easier. This way, if we have to build ships, you know, if we're having to defend ourselves or whatever, at least a couple of our bases, Redstone and Spirit, which I think are these two, we don't have to worry about as much. They should be able to defend themselves. They have some firepower, etc. Might have to come back in and help, but you know, we'll see. We're not sure how, you know, how power-to-power combat's going to actually work out. What the capabilities are of these things. We can look at it and see that it's got a 3 with a missile, with combat drones. I don't know what that one is. I think it has one combat drone, yeah, and this has three. And I think you can only build up to the large defense network. I don't think it's like settlements. I don't think you can just keep building more and more things. So I think it's more like the other advances that it looks like. A few people doing colonization, a few people holding off on things they could build that might even be useful. So for example, the Chinese, could build more settlement here, or a bigger spaceport or whatever, but they've got the capabilities to push out if they need to. But if we go to war, and there's sounds of that, there's like, but which one do we go to war against? North America, Russia? Are they actually in the lead? It's hard to tell. We could do this big victory point calculation. Russia's big pile of mission markers and their victory points and how far they've gotten. This is all kind of pointing to them as the big baddie right now. And if we can bring Russia down, say with a coalition of the willing, then going for North America next might be the move. Of course, Russia and North America might see the way the sounds are echoing and might actually work towards an alliance. I don't know if that's going to happen. I did not push this forward yet, and just using up lots of chatter room, but we can do 2-hour videos, whatever. Okay, here in, I guess, 2008, we have, for the most part, the people who have who have money left. That's not many. Well, not many with much, are lifting resources. We have a couple exceptions. Europe is fleeing a flyby out. I don't have a lot of robotics out there. There was nothing really pressing I need to do. I can build a settlement here and get that up to the 5. This is basically let's get cleaned up before the end of the decade. We have 2 turns. And well, the Russians are sending to their new base. The US is unable to do that with the North Americans because they have no cash. I mean, yeah, they could exchange a politics marker for $1 billion. That allows them to pull 1 resource. That's not sufficient. We'll see if I have anything that's landing places. They don't have a lot of resources to shift around either, so I doubt that they'll be doing much in that direction either. As per the designer, the rules give an incorrect statement, and the way I was playing it originally with production is indeed correct. Here they say if you have the tech-space mining, you can produce resources located at worlds that have world cards, even gas giants, which seems to indicate that you can't do it at worlds that don't. Later on, it is vaguer about this. It doesn't specifically say you must have a world card, but right there it's very clear. But he did indicate that, yeah, at a world like this that has a resource bonus, I can indeed use that resource bonus for my die roll. I can't try to produce resources that there's no indication that they exist. And that's what I was doing originally, and then I found that world card thing, and I was like, wow, that kind of sucks, because when I'm looking at worlds that don't have a resource card yet, it might be kind of nice to be able to produce some additional resources. And I may be doing that right now. That would be to get some additional metal or ore for this base. I certainly will play it according to his interpretation, because it was my initial one as well. It could be a very good turn for the Russian exploration. The Chinese actually got a depletion as well, but the Russians have managed to deplete this and protect it. They got it down to 0. Now it can't change. They drew a card that they didn't want to put in place. And they're getting this to a 0. This is a new situation. They didn't find life, though. High chances, like 13% or something. Over here, there's no world card there. So we keep drawing until we get a legitimate one. And let's take a look at what we're looking at so that we can see. So we're looking at a rocky asteroid, minimal gravity, no atmosphere. All of those could be the determination. And we'll start drawing. Well, we got one that succeeds immediately, so this automatically must be placed. Kind of cool about these ships that are capable of mining. They can largely produce the resources that they need to refuel themselves. So as long as they have a base with appropriate, supply station, spaceport, whatever, nearby, they can then go to that and resupply with the equipment with the resources that they found, which tends to be a really big bonus. Those guys tend to be able to last out there longer. Just because otherwise you have to lift the resources or produce them at the beginning of the turn or ship them there some other way. But these ships are able to produce the resources that you need at that base a little bit more easily. Other notes, first of all, I had a brain fart and did Asia before Europe. That kind of stuff just happens continuously for me. It's just a cost of playing games, right? I mean, it's not just solo. It happens under normal circumstances as well. But the Japanese managed to do something kind of cool here, which was they converted the card here on the U.S. Now, I don't know if this is a particularly a worse card for the North Americans, but it makes, because it improved the blue supplies, which allows further expansion, but it took away the big supply marker there, and it took away, well, I don't know, an engineering research, but replaced it with an equivalent physics research. So if I decide to go with a research base there, that's not terribly bad. But that's not a great research base. And I kind of might be getting screwed up here, where this is actually probably a better place. Nah, it looks about the same. I don't know. But it's more in question whether the North Americans are going to be sharing a base with other people. They're moving forward so quickly that they're not tapping out the planetoids or whatever in time, and everybody else isn't jumping in on the same base. So now something better might show up. Interesting point, this decade we've gone through the engineering cup twice already. So you can see those points are getting fairly high across the board. This time it was mainly China, Asia, and Japan who managed to collect the points. China especially has really kind of thrown out a lot more robotic stuff, which is more likely, to be finding these additional things. And there's a lot of engineering spaces out as we go further out. Engineering and physics. We're not seeing a lot happening in the physics for whatever reason. I'm not sure why. In 2108 with really the only really exciting thing, that research station being built for the bio research over here. It's fully claimed now. And getting towards the end of the decade. Yay. I kind of don't like. There's this thawing relations, which moves everybody towards neutral. And there's also already a mechanism in place that moves one nation towards neutral regularly. There's nothing in the events to spark any kind of conflict, even something that I think would be very simple, which would be, let's just, invasion and incoming. These are different. But there's nothing to push any sort of military conflict, right? Any kind of tensions, nothing like that that's represented there. And it's one of the things that's preventing, me from exploring the military side of things in a game like EU, which I consider this to be kind of similar to, as opposed to, say, WIF, which, the designer has his pedigree more from there. In WIF, the war is just sort of pre-programmed, right? It just happens. There's no such war here that's going to happen, and it would actually be antithetical to the game to have that kind of mass war. That's not what's being postulated. But it would make sense to me, especially if you were to postulate the possibility of an Earth war happening that's outside of the control of all of this. I mean, the concept of 130 years, 140 years of absolute peace seems highly unlikely. And I would think that there should be events that kind of randomly throw nations or even groups of nations into war situations, and possibly a greater war than the game actually exposes. One way that EU kind of does that is by saying, look, they don't have hey, there's something going on Earth that's outside your control. What they have is national goals, which are kind of pre-programmed, and you have the choice to ignore them at cost. And that's a whole complicated system that I think is beyond the realm of this. But just throwing people sort of randomly into a war situation where they can choose not to participate and not to pursue it in space, for the same reason that sometimes colonial ventures didn't really get too deeply into a war situation when they were first starting out. You might have some plundering and some raiding, but you really didn't have anything too major. But later on, when there were big militaries out there and the value of those colonial resources was high enough, you start seeing them being drawn in more deeply into the wars. And I think that would be kind of a nice way to make something where the value of the war is kind of based on the reality of the space situation, but the opportunity to do it isn't something that you have to make a conscious decision for. But, that would involve tinkering with the events chart, which I'm sure not going to do on my first playthrough. The nature of 10 turns to a decade and then a special economic phase where stuff's actually produced changes behavior a little bit. Some of the shipping's a little different than you'd expect, with things moving into locations with the expectation of being treated as a freighter going from that location. So you're seeing some of that kind of action going on, and also people otherwise setting up for our technology is going to change perhaps, so let's set ourselves up so we're ready to move the next planet out if that's a possibility. Still not a lot of effort heading towards Mercury. The Japanese are sending something though to Venus, which makes no fucking sense whatsoever. I screwed up. Let me fix that. They should be heading to Mercury. There's no chance of finding anything at Venus. There's chances of finding stuff either from the sun or at Mercury. Except somebody left a pirate lying around at Mercury. Let me rethink of this whole existence of this ship, because it's been heading someplace it doesn't really need to be. It may not be a terribly valuable ship, so I'm going to send it instead back to the asteroid belt, which is, I think, where it came from. Pretty sure. Which means it came from here. I'm just going to send it back and decommission it. Still have to pay the maintenance cost if there is one, but it's not really serving me any purpose anymore. I forgot I had a pirate down in Mercury, where nobody is. Most of the exploration turned out fairly dull, except for South America, who had two nice things. First of all, they got a depletion over here, and finished off the main asteroid belt, kind of boning it, putting a worse card down, because it doesn't really hurt them, and maybe it'll hurt someone else this turn, but in the long range it's going to hurt everyone a little bit. But that's kind of cool. It makes it so that only really iron can be mined there. Now somehow I've depleted everybody's mining capabilities, throughout the asteroid belt on everything else. That's the only card that's in play. That's a little weird. To me, it feels like each planet should have many different options on it, but I understand the abstraction in play. The more exciting place was over here, where I managed to not get a different card in play. No, actually, I think I managed to bone the North American card there. Now, there's still room for somebody to improve it, but that's becoming less and less appealing. is better for a production location, I think. For research, though, that's not terrible, but it's not great. So there's kind of a, maybe a base belongs somewhere else. But I also found signs of life there and got the whole pool of happiness there. You know, of course, everybody's already got that first level of from the discovering signs of life. The only person, the two people, and South America is one of them, has actually gotten the discovery of life. Now, Asia is the one who actually did it. The South Americans just bought it. And now to the final bases before we go to the economic period. And almost nothing on the base building. Let me just go through what happened. The U.S. finally decided, yeah, I'll spend my one political chit and get rid of that buy chit that I don't really need. That'll get me another draw next turn, and honestly, I think I want that. I think it's worth more than the tech, although I'm kind of falling behind in the tech race, I think. Somebody, Japan, I think, did something. They upped a settlement back here, on Mars, because what the hell, I'm going to be producing more resources. It gives me a 1 in 10 more chance of getting an additional settlement, so it seemed worthwhile. The other person, EU, up to a 5 settlement. This was dumb, but I did it and just left it. It gets me to another level, but that level doesn't really matter. It just gives me another resource, and I could always, it doesn't give me another resource. It would give me another tech if I had a research facility there. And we're on to the economic phase, and we'll see if I can get that done tonight. I hope so. It's still daylight, right? Random event is 68, a survey area. You roll percentile, select a world, and draw a random world card. If that card can apply, it does. You just swap it out or add it. And 04, that's going to put us probably down here at Mercury. If I can find the number. Yep. Right, yeah. So, Mercury does not have severe atmosphere, so that one doesn't happen. The initiative phase, this is where the diplomacy thinking starts happening. So, China and South America have the best and the only capability to actually go to full-scale war. Anything less than war is a little iffy in my view. Yeah, I can pick on CVs, but I can't smack bases around, which is where the real cost happens. All I can do is kind of blockade them at the end of the decade, if I remember. And then here's where things become iffy. I'm looking and I'm like, I'm not sure that I want to say China feels particularly behind, say, Russia or North America. Russia's probably the biggest positive right now. They have a lot of base. They have all these mission markers. They're almost as far out as the North Americans are. So if I wanted to pick on one, I'm kind of leaning towards Russia. But on the other hand, trying to convince, say, South America to join me in this, it's a little painful because, maybe, but you're getting this huge tech bonus that you've built up, and I don't know, we're both about equal elsewhere, kind of leaning towards it, but I'm not sure that I want to pay any initiative. I think I'm going to rely on trying to get a good initiative value just off the basis. And by the way, from a response that I got from the designer, I think I'm doing the initiative right, where I'm taking a percentage of the die roll. Rather, it's not absolutely clear with what he said, but it seems like that idea of just adding points was something that didn't occur to him. So I'm catching the right impact of that, which means that, yes, initiative's going to be pretty damn random, even if you buy a lot of points. You could get a plus 100%, and still roll an 0-1, then you're at 0-2. Whereas if you just added 100 points, wow, you would pretty much be able to guarantee, yes, I am buying the initiative here. At least if you go late in the choices, but yeah. Japan's the only one who spent. They actually spent one marker, and that got them a space on Europe. So maybe it's of value. They wanted to spend something because they're kind of towards the top of a lot of the development charts and would like to see other people go forward, give them some bonuses. That's probably not worth the politics marker, the three research points. Probably is worth more. It's hard to tell, because since we did push over Europe, if we get at least one place where we go in where Europe has added before us, and Europe's also at the top of the chart, we break even, so that's not bad. The big points though, China and Asia. South America, with its big 40%, didn't get as much of a gain. The difficulties targeting one person, etc. I give a 1 in 10 chance for China and South America to come to an agreement to go for things. And then because China already has a military ship, they went for a 1 in 10 chance on their own. Neither one panned out. Nobody is expending anything on diplomacy. Again, the payoffs for the free trade just don't seem that valuable. And higher levels, it's still just $1 billion. And then the capacity to trade with other people, which, if you both do it, if you come to agreements and work it, but here's the problem. You got to get ships there to do it. A big colony can just trade so much material at once that, for the most part, I don't think I'd allow people to trade with my counters. Although I might occasionally, if I want to clear out a counter or something. But otherwise, I'd be... it's not really free trade, right? The counters are such a rare commodity and so valuable that I'm not really tempted to think that there's any great advantage to that. And the 1 billion is just not worth it. Production's really kind of booming. Remember I got that booster. But some people have sort of decided, yeah, I'm going to deal with producing the most that I can and ship stuff between places. Others have gone for a more balanced approach. So over here we have a more balanced attempt. Some people, Japan is sort of the iffiest of the ones who went for the unbalanced approach. So they don't have a lot of freighter capacity particularly. They have this thing, which I guess I could make into a freighter. Oodles of money on people. I remembered to produce extra with Asia this time, finally. Give them their bonus. But, some of that money has to be eaten up. So, for example, for bases, I am 2 bases over my limit with North America. And now, sitting on this limits me to that. Wrong one. Limits me to that. But I don't get anything additional. There's no better space. This space doesn't give me more base costs. So with this many bases out there, and I only have one more, it cost me 6 plus 4 is $10. I hope I'm not over on CVs as well, because I'll have almost no cash to play with it by now. That only Russia and North America had to pay the penalty, and in both cases it was at $10 billion. Russia can afford it, North America not so much. Russia's not that wealthy either. The big money, Europe, China, they're over 50 each, transported materials around, trying to balance things out a little bit more. And now we're on the bases, the Pirates, asteroids, and of course the trade markers. I found out what I'm doing wrong with the asteroids and pirates. They don't get assigned to the actual body. They go in the flyby box no matter what, which means the asteroid indeed is not something where you have a choice. You go to that asteroid, well, unless if somebody else mines it, you don't get a shot at it. So, yeah. And the same thing with the pirates. They don't blockade some little Doinky Planet, they are in the flyby box. I don't think I did that. It may have just been the magic of the die rolls, but we didn't see that. But we saw me put asteroids out near a planetoid, and that's not correct. I don't know how much difference it makes. And we got 2 new pirates and an asteroid out there. Pirates are gonna get cleaned up. They're too easy to kill. There's enough combat capability out there. And obviously the asteroid is kind of a race for whoever can get to that as well. Did not do the trade markers yet, though. I thought I had too many bases, and when you have that, you have to go through a kind of painful mechanical aspect of going through each player to pick, hey, I'm going to draw a counter for this base, roll the die, etc., as opposed to just running over everything. Turns out I had 1 extra, so they all got assigned. And that puts us to whatever's next. The technology is the hard part. Well, this is going to take me a long ass time. I'll probably take a break before I go to that. There's a lot of points available. My worries about, hey, the tech is going to run out, it's not true. There's still plenty of stuff to explore. Yes, I killed the central stuff where the CVs could explore, but elsewhere there's plenty of things. They're just lower values than they were. They're harder to figure out, you know. Of course, technology makes up for that. There's bonuses from that, but also there's additional points from the biological research, from the you're getting more from these, and you're getting, whatever research stations you built, which so far is just the U.S. and Russia. This is the part of the game that always kills my back, but just leaning over and thinking about this all the time. Should have it on a hierarchy, like a drafting table or something, just this one board, because I have to spend so much time bending over, leaning on one heel. All right, so everybody's played out their chits. China ended up at the end being able to buy a few things. What we've got is, they got into nanotech. They didn't use that. They did use their physics bonus, and so I think did both Japan and the EU in terms of buying their way into the trade routes. I believe, I hope it's not the damn space elevators. But yeah, you can see Japan went for space elevators. Nobody else went for that. The others went for further automation, and then China all the way up to the nanotech. Not everyone made it to the bases. In particular, North America, which didn't really want to cause this to happen, so they held off. They would not have had enough money left anyway if they had made it, right? This was 1, 2, 3, 5, 15. That gets into 15, and they had 7, 10. So they wouldn't have had enough to catch up to that, even if they hadn't diddled around. But one of the things they didn't want to do was make this cheap on anyone, because everybody who gets that gets to go further on. Better crew exploration. A few people joined them up there. And, one of the ways to delay things is to buy military stuff. It tends to be cheaper than everything else, so you see a lot of advances on that. The chart may be a little confusing in some places. So, for example, here, everybody has reached this. I do that with the straight lines. I don't do that everywhere. I try to make it so that, because otherwise I won't understand what's going on. And I know we got to do this. I don't know if there's anything else left. I got to have them research capability too. I did this last time. This time I'm paying attention. These pirates are considered to be blockading, which means that the number, because of the order of play, the settlements are actually decreasing rather than increasing, which is kind of an interesting situation. Last time I thought that there would be less, that there would be a turn to clear out the pirates before the settlements get decreased. That's not the case, but there is a turn to clear them out before your production gets decreased. Real painful to watch those settlements that you've been building up die because of a damn
a damn embargo. Oh, look, Earth can't possibly get pirates or asteroids. Over on the policy side, which is the last thing that we do, seeing the groupthink come into play here. The crew vehicles, the bases, those seem important, so everybody's filled out on those. There's one more free placement beyond that. And then we have to start withdrawing things if we want to shift. The one thing we're seeing is people taking as their next choice militarization. We see that everybody's kind of pushed forward on militarization where they can. I'm trying to figure this out, so this doesn't seem right. Something seems wrong here. So like I'm looking and then there's extra pieces for Asia that are on the board. Like they're at the top of everything. And then they also are in both of these. So I think I screwed something up. I'm not sure what. I don't know. Quite probably moved Asia instead of South America at some point in the line. But let me count how many spaces each person has, and anybody who's over 9 is going to have to pay, and anybody who's under is going to get a bonus. The Asians were like 2 over, and South America was 1 under. Russia was on 1 under. I don't know how it happened. I've reshifted things with that same devotion. Let's get the military, because that gets you the advantage on the initiative chart, which is important for grabbing asteroids and stuff. It's probably important in military, I would assume, but it's really important in terms of the type chart. So we fiddled that out. Everybody's at 9. Everything's good. We have something new. What's this? Titan. Titan's not tapped out. It's a crew exploration, which isn't very easy. There are people who can possibly do that. So first of all, no one got to the greater range, I don't think. Yeah, no one got to that 4-point crew vehicle range, which would have allowed... The problem is you need this first. That would have allowed people to jump directly from Saturn out to Neptune. But the U.S. has a base here, which North America, whatever, which they could build up and devote. And anybody who can build a base out there could also build up shipping. And they don't need much of a supply depot there to get a CV2 out there. So that's something I'll try to remember that, we want to get that. But the first crew exploration of Titan is going to be able to get you another mission marker. And mission markers are hard to come by nowadays. Should look at the next few. They're probably further out. What do we got? Cherry-Clo, Venus. The pressure hulls. Nobody's been going for them. Okay. Venus is not explorable, though. That shit should be gone. Although it's conceivable that it could re-show up. So I'm going to leave it out there just on the chance that an event makes Venus interesting again. Strict reading of the rules, that shit's gone. But I'd rather leave it as a possibility because it does keep things more interesting. And this one's going up, and tomorrow we'll start the 2110 decade. Yay!